Welcome to Cyberthink, the saga of how I turned an innocent vintage TV into a cursed Cyberdeck using a ThinkCentre M73 Tiny. A journey filled with poor choices, technical mishaps, and me doubting my life decisions. But also some victories. Over the past 5 years, I've watched a ton of Cyberdeck builds on YouTube. Some are crazy, expensive and finely crafted, while others look like something a raccoon pieced together after raiding a tech dumpster. For those who don't know, a Cyberdeck is basically a DIY portable computer inspired by the retro-futuristic tech from cyberpunk worlds, a blend of nostalgia, dystopia, and a love for broken keyboards. I've always wanted to make one myself, but between procrastination and the fear that I'd break something, I never had the guts to start. That all changed one fateful day at a flea market, where I stumbled upon an old Universum FK100 RTV radio combo from the 1968 for €10. A beautiful piece of vintage tech. But did I have the heart to rip it apart? Spoiler, I didn't. After spending way too long staring at it, I realized tearing apart this beauty would hurt my soul. Not to mention it would be nearly impossible to find a good LCD screen that fit its unique proportions. Plus, it was metal, which would have turned it into a glorified Faraday cage, blocking any wireless signals I needed for the PC inside. So, I let that dream die, at least for a while. 1 year later, the stars aligned, and I found another vintage TV. A Sunkyung radio TV from 1990 for €10. This one was made of plastic, so no Wi-Fi killing issues. And the screen size was perfect for what I wanted to build. At first, I thought about keeping the original CRT screen, using a bunch of adapters to make it work. But it had some defects, and it weighed a ton. So, with much less guilt this time, I tore it apart. Now the nightmare could finally begin. Smashing the old CRT screen out was the easy part. Then came the real challenge. Fitting a new 5-inch LCD display, 800 by 480, into the TV case, after ordering a right-angle HDMI and power cables to save space. I slapped the screen in there. But, surprise, it didn't quite fit vertically. No worries though, I solved this with a highly technical solution. Stuffing the gap with black fabric. Hey, it looked better than you'd expect. What do you guys think? Next, I needed a brain for this cursed beast. I've always wanted a Raspberry Pi. And it seemed like the ideal fit. But after some wallet-based searching, I went for a cheaper option. A mini PC. Initially, I wanted to try an HP G1400 with an Intel i3 for €40. But of course, I realized it was missing a heatsink and fan. Fortunately, the seller offered me an alternative for the same price. I ended up settling for a ThinkCentre M73 with an i3 4th gen, which came without RAM, SSD, or Wi-Fi. Luckily, I had some spare parts lying around, a 120GB crucial SSD and some compatible 6 RAM sticks. A USB Wi-Fi dongle took care of the WRLs, and I threw Ubuntu 24 on it. Then instead of trying to squeeze it inside the TV case, because that would have required actual effort, I just zip-tied the whole PC to the top of the radio TV. Yes, it looks a bit trashy, but it kind of added to the whole cyberpunk but built in your garage vibe. Feeling cocky and full of DIY energy, I decided it was time for an upgrade. Not that I needed it, but I'm a nerd, and if you can upgrade something, why wouldn't you? After some research, I ordered an Intel Core i5 4690 for €23 and 16GB of RAM. The CPU, it's a quad-core and, in my mind, the most powerful chip that would work in the M73 without overheating. Guess what? It didn't. The fan spun up, the LED lights came on, but the screen was completely dead. No error beeps, just the sweet silence of failure. After hours of Googling and questioning my life choices, I discovered the issue. My BIOS hadn't been updated since 2014. Of course, updating the BIOS from Ubuntu proved a disaster, so I grudgingly installed Windows on a spare HDD just to get the BIOS updated. Long story short, after days of trial and error, I finally got the BIOS up to date, thanks to some Lenovo tools I found online, not in the official M73 page. Feeling victorious, I slapped the i5 back in, and sadly got the same result. So, feeling defeated, I took a couple of days to sulk over the fact that I couldn't even manage to update a simple BIOS. Then, I read somewhere that the problem might actually be the CMOS battery. Apparently, even if the BIOS is up to date, resetting the CMOS by removing the battery for a few minutes can sometimes help. Seizing the opportunity, I replaced the old battery with this gorgeous one from IKEA. Okay, it's not gorgeous at all. Unfortunately, that didn't work either, and my disappointment only deepened. It turned out the i5 4690 wasn't compatible with the tiny version of the M73. I needed a processor that ended with a T. My joy evaporated, and I had to face the fact that I'd bought the wrong CPU. After some more digging, and regretting every choice I'd made, I ordered the i5 4590T, the most powerful CPU that was actually compatible with the tiny M73. This CPU was priced at $24. But after I added it to my favorites, the seller offered it to me for $15. I'd say that's a great deal. Meanwhile, the RAM I ordered had gotten lost in transit. Thanks, Amazon. So I had to reorder a different brand. Then, surprise, I ended up receiving both orders. That's right, Amazon sent me free RAM. A rare stroke of luck in this cursed build. With my 16 gigabytes of RAM and my new CPU, I decided to go all out and use liquid metal for cooling. Risky, I know, but I've done it before. And so far, nothing's exploded. Once installed, the system was snappier, and my Python benchmarks, I'll share the GitHub repo in the description, showed a clear performance boost. After installing the new CPU and applying liquid metal for cooling, I immediately noticed a significant performance boost, especially in the multi-core tests. The PC became noticeably more responsive, and processing times were greatly reduced. But the best part, the CPU temperature under stress stayed much lower than before. Meaning that not only is it faster, but it's also much more efficient at handling heat. Even better, emulation improved a lot. PS1 games on PCSXR now ran smoothly. And while PCSX2, for PS2 games, still struggled with some ISOs, about 2/3 of them ran perfectly fine. So, that's the story of my cursed Cyberdeck. Despite all the setbacks, mistakes, and sleepless nights, I'm actually really happy with how it turned out. It's not perfect, but that's what makes it cyberpunk. Right, I'll be using it primarily for emulators and some light programming. But honestly, the best part is knowing I've added this chaotic machine to my collection. I own more powerful computers. Sure, but nothing beats the satisfaction of finally completing a project you've dreamed about for years. My cursed Cyberdeck now stands proudly among them. An odd but proud member of my tech family.